Hey everybody, and welcome to our third installment of our community forum. And today we are going to be talking to Karida Griffith. And our topic today is hot topics in dance. I'm very interested about this conversation and having this conversation. We've had a few people chime in and ask some questions. So it's going to be a really engaging conversation. I'm looking forward to it and having Karida back with us live. Karida's been doing a lot of work on her end involving dance education and racism in the dance world. So I'm just thrilled to have her back. And for those of you who are new to us and just jumping on for the first time, Common Ground is a project that I started with Jermaine Salzberg, and it's both a community and a classroom setting for tap dancers of all styles and all backgrounds, and trying to create more of a sense of this inclusiveness. So it'll be interesting to have Karida be part of this community today and get to talk to her. So she's about to jump on right now. So just give us 1 second, and here she is. Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
good. I never know what this is going to look like until it's like
I know, until
completed.
you like jump on with the person.
And then you're like, oh, that's okay. All right.
You're like, oh,
I'm
it's
trying to
closer than
think.
I thought. That's what I always
I know.
think.
I'm like, oh, I'm like,
Woo! There it all is.
a little close up. A little
Hey,
close up.
so thanks for jumping on and being part of this tonight.
Of course. Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Hello,
We're
everybody.
we're under about 2 feet of snow where I am right now.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah, the snowmageddon is back.
Oh,
Yeah, but
it's got to do it sometimes.
yeah, I
New
know.
York and
Exactly. You just have to like be planning for it. So, but anyway, well, I want to just jump right into some things because, we have only a limited amount of time, and I'm going to keep the comments on. So at some point, I will also throw it out to our audience and see if they have any questions or things that they want to ask. But the first topic that I want to jump right into, because I think it's something that you are it's familiar ground to you, is dance education in this day and age. I want to talk about what what dance teachers and dance studio owners in Nebraska should be really considering when they are approaching all styles of dance, but specifically, since Common Ground is a tap project, specifically tap education. And what's the problem there? Where is the disconnect?
we disconnect. I'm like, well,
So what are the disconnects, and how can we start to create better communication and a better sense of authenticity when we're talking about history?
I mean, I think that it's such an interesting thing because I now, like, having worked with tap dance teachers specifically on training and development since 2018, I can say that the first thing that I saw was like the technical disconnects. And so there's Diane has spoken about this quite a bit, but like the idea that a lot of people who started studios originally decades ago themselves had performing careers, were in New York or in Vegas or in some environment like that where they were getting everything that they were getting, and then bringing that to the studio environment. And then as more studios are passed on to another, a child, or to a student, or to, it's like over time things can be watered down. You think of that game of telephone, it's like
Right.
the way things are taught. And so technically speaking, or history wise, things can be lost, and so I can see that telephone effect, not just with the technique, but also of course with the history component. I mean, some tap dancers even probably never knew full, like an idea of a greater history of something like tap dance, but you certainly see that disconnect now. And that's the beautiful thing about where we are now with the digital age, is that you don't have to travel to the thing, whatever the event is, to get some support. And so now it's like there's so many resources out there. One, there's a ton of information out there, but there's also trainings like the one that I set up, where you can really dig in as an educator and say, okay, there's one thing for me to like go and take a couple of classes and like, get some ideas. Like there's that thing, but there's like, what are you going back into your classrooms and doing? Like what's happening in there, So
Right, because
like,
your thing is so structured. There's a real system. It's systematic in a way that it's tangible. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think sometimes when you go and you take a quick master class or something like that, or you're there on a weekend for a festival, you're getting a lot of different perspectives, which with Common Ground, we're all about that. But I think what's lacking is that there's real structure, to the teaching and to the history. And what you're doing is, I think, creating that. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, and I think my effort has been to work with dance educators on, the history work or the technique work with tap, but without making even that stuff rigid. I think that it's about principles, right? It's a lot about principles. And then inside of that, you can be the kind of choreographer that you want to be. It's like you your students. You're standing in front of that 7-year-old, and you have a sense of what to say to that 7-year-old better than I know what to say to that 7-year-old. So it's not just this list of steps, and if you don't do this list of things, then but it's about communication. It's about principles with dance. It's about those ideas and giving teachers the space to be their best selves in the space. It's not all about us as teachers. We know that we're not the center of the universe, but we do command the space, right? So it's like we do set the tone in the space. And so much of the way that we set tone with regard to history, with regard to technique, gives so many over and what's the opposite of overt?
I know. I know what you mean. Yes.
It's like intentional and unintentional messages, right? So what we offer speaks to what we believe the priorities are.
So it's not just about a syllabus; it's about an ideology.
Yeah, and it's about what you deliver. So it's like I could give you a list of combos, and there are programs around the world. Certainly in the UK, like it's like exams and but like it's this whole very codified thing, and there's different syllabi here where it's like you have this list of things to do, but you and I both know there's shuffles and there's shuffles. Everybody's teaching shuffles. But some people's shuffles are getting them to live their life to dream, and some people's shuffles are getting them cut at the audition.
Right.
So it's like there's shuffles and there's shuffles, and so it's like how are you teaching shuffles that this is happening, versus how are you teaching to where you train Justin, you train Karida, and now they get to do this with their shuffles.
Right. I think what you were saying about the communication, that is so interesting because, and I don't know if you feel this as well, but I think you see where teachers falter even more so today, because when you're online, there has to be such clarity to what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And I've just noticed it. And it's why, I'm really so thankful that we have the kind of group that we have, because they are specific when they teach. But I think maybe it's partly that too, that things just kind of get glazed over, and that concept of being able to sing it, count it, say it, it's that's sort of gone, and it's becoming more and more apparent. And I worry that, if that's happening and we're going to be in this kind of thing for a while, and then ultimately it's going to become an element of dance education, as you said, because now it's resources that you can turn on your computer, and you don't have to get on a plane and go to Lincoln Center, or get on a plane and go to New York, and get all of that, or wherever. But do you worry about that, and there being even more of that game of telephone, getting more and more deeper as this goes on, or do you think that we can flatten the curve, I guess, if
Well, you're right.
lack of a better phrase. Sorry.
I think that it's, I think it makes it more glaring. I think it makes it more glaring. And I think that teachers have different philosophies about like when to move on to the next exercise and why. When to move on from, you know, the history lesson and why. Is what we've done right here enough? And what are the determinations that you're saying, let's move on to the next thing? There's a lot of teachers who, you know, are trying to hold on to their enrollments. They're like, what do I need to do to keep my numbers up and that? And that's a huge concern in different studios around, certainly around the US. And so fear of boredom, they're getting bored. I feel like I'm losing them. Like, so I need to keep, you know, I got to keep it moving. I got to keep it like, so the idea of stopping to show a video for some is like nightmarish because they're like, you want me to talk about history now? Like, I'm just trying to keep them like, you know.
With this black and white video that is so old that it looks like it's, you know,
so
was
like
found in a time machine.
They're like, they're not going to get bored with it. Are they going to get bored? Well, what if they get bored? Well, what if they get bored? And so, this is good enough. It's taken too much time, therefore we need to move on. Not that a certain level of depth has been achieved, like you were saying, in terms of understanding, musicality, independence of the students. Can they do it without you? Like, you know, there's like, you know, or we've done it enough times just for the sake of the clock. Like, it's been 15 minutes, therefore we need to go on.
But that's what I mean. That's specific, and I know that these kinds of philosophies and seminars have been around before, but what you're talking about is really specific, you know, and learning how to use the hour or use the 90 minutes and really being true to that and not changing and almost compromising your own strong viewpoint and teaching technique because of the clock or because of boredom or because of lack of numbers. It's about staying true.
The thing of keeping it busy, but if they're not evolving, students know when they're not getting better.
Right.
They're smart. The kids are smart. Obviously, the adults are smart. And so there's the discouragement question, I think, is the bigger question than are they bored in this 30 seconds? Or are they bored in this 5 minutes? Because if you feel like you're spinning your wheels anywhere in life, you wonder why you're still there. You know?
Yes, yeah.
So
yes,
like,
I do.
It's like, why am I still doing these ab exercises when it's been 6 months and nothing looks any different? Like, it's just like, why am I still doing this? And I remember the first time I ran my training in 2018, actually, Innovative Dance. I'm like, hey there, Molly. I'm like, this is the shirt. I'm like, Molly sent me this shirt out of the blue. Sorry. Shout out to Innovative Dance. She sent me this. Motivator for Monday. I'm like, there we go.
Yes.
But she said, Tim, there's a teacher in Omaha. And she said she had a couple of students who, classes, who felt like they weren't picking up choreography well. And so they had it in their heads like, we don't pick up. We don't know how to pick up. And so this is their feeling about themselves. They may be taking the class because it's required to be on the company team or, you know, but they're just like, well, we're doing it, but man, you know, or there's a section of a dance that they worked on for months and couldn't get clean.
Right.
She adapts strategy. All of a sudden they can learn faster. They get more done in less time and their eyes light up because they actually got it and they can hear that it sounds better. And so all of a sudden they're like, you mean we're good at this? Well, all right. You know, like, game on, give us something else. Like, give us something else. Like, all of a sudden they are who they are in their other dance classes, you know, in those studio settings. They are who they are in contemporary. They are who they are in these other classes where they feel like they're getting it, where they can do it. But if they don't feel like they can achieve, And they've been listening for it sound like trash for months. You know what I mean? And it's like, we're going to try and clean this section again. Like, okay. Like, and they will try and try and try and try and try. But if the teacher can just pick out a different tool, all of a sudden, like, the sky's
Well,
open.
it's like if this one key isn't unlocking that door, you gotta hope that you have more on your key ring, and you gotta hope that one of them will open that door, right?
And that's what I am giving to teachers. That's what my program is about, the tools. It's like, you can use these with whatever exercise you want. You find another exercise online you like, great. You still can use this stuff, you know, to get to a certain quality achievement to where you feel like the needle has moved, they feel like the needle has moved, and now we can move on and happily go, cool, okay, we got somewhere with that, okay, like, let's, you know, go on and get somewhere with something else, and make that kind of incremental progress. Who's that? I do it. Wait.
I'm gonna text you.
Okay.
Make sure you have your phone.
Okay.
Life, it's the best
We're
part.
home, y'all. We're home.
Okay, I wanna just kind of veer off of that, but still on that. So yeah, I'm sure you've seen on social media, Jared Grimes came onto his TikTok and brought up this comment that was made about Irish step dancing and that being an original form of tap dancing, and Jared went on and you know, talked about the 5 points and talked about Master Juba and talked about instruments getting taken away from the slaves, and I think just kind of schooled everybody in literally a 15-second video, which was very necessary, but so my question to you is, why are we still having this problem with that form or that part of history, you know, and does that have to do with the area and the climate that you're growing up in and that you're learning in as a dancer, and can that be changed, and do you even think that people would want to change that, even if they did believe that that might be true, that tap dancing, that yes, Irish step, there was an influence for sure, but you know, just as far as being, as I said earlier, more authentic and accurate with the historical elements of this?
I think that's happening. I think that's happening for a lot of reasons. I guess it probably depends on the person, but it's definitely there. I love Jared. Like, I was like,
Me too.
It's like, how long did that take?
It took 15 seconds. It was a TikTok video. It was just like
next. Like, I think that I think there's a big disconnect for a lot of us across styles with an understanding of West African culture, dance, and music. And that guy who just peeped his head in here, I'm like, do you have your phone? He teaches West African drum and dance. And as I learned more from him, I had limited knowledge, you know, growing up. I started studying a bit when I was 12 and going on, but he's a library of rhythms, dance, you know, there's so many different kinds. And when we don't know them, I think that it's hard to understand, you know, or reference if the only way that you've seen West African dance is like, I see arms flailing.
right.
That's all, you know, I see like the arm, like I see an arm circle. You know, it's like,
Absolutely, yes. Right.
what West African dance is. But if you don't sit with the music, if you don't dig into the movement, then I think it's easy to dismiss that as the little influence.
Yes.
I think that's one way that happens.
Okay.
And I think that the more of that knowledge that there is and a deepening of that, then I think it helps people. I might have told you this last time we talked, but I was I did a residency in a middle school, and I was talking about, you know, the transatlantic trade and, you know, and the creation of rhythm and movement in absence of the drum. And I brought up tap dance and I did a little demonstration. I had like sneakers on and something, but I still just did a little something,
Yeah.
For the students. And there was a student in there who just went, I just want to thank you for saying that tap dance is not Irish step. I don't know where people think that that is the case. I've been studying Irish step, and she like went on this, like she launched and was like, I've been studying Irish step for this long, and the technique is nothing like the other technique.
Oh,
like,
and she
like
was an Irish step dancer, and she was saying that.
yeah.
Wow,
And she's
that's
like,
awesome.
no, like we stand like this, da, 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 like, and when you study it, it's like, get into stance for Irish step. Susu fifth, a
Right.
sensible tom doing from fifth. Like, it's like, what's the stance? You get in a stance for tap dance, and it's more like what West African is,
Right.
even just from where you start.
Yes, and that is the fundamental, right? That is the foundation. So it's like for us to assume that it's equal parts, it doesn't make any sense. And I agree with you. I think it's dismissive. I think it's it for far too long it has gotten a very small amount of attention. And it needs to change. I know that I'm really trying to do that. I spoke to Jermaine Salzberg, who teaches tap for vocal students. I believe it's vocal students at NYU, and I teach in the dance department at Marymount. And yes, and so we have both been talking about this, and really trying to, as you just said, dig deeper. I think that's the best way to put it. And what a great month to do that, dig deeper, this month and do what you can to extend and expound your knowledge if you really, really want to know. I'll be honest, Karida, our audience definitely, as of now, and we're trying to open it up more, is more of a musical theater, I think background audience. And it's one of the reasons why Jermaine and I wanted to do this, was because we wanted those people to understand what they were doing. And then we also, wanted to be as inclusive as possible, and certainly pay homage to the history of Broadway dance and its influence, but to know that it's not, it did not originate with George M. Cohan. You know what I mean? It did, right? I mean, but that,
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think if you go to a musical theater program, or you're in a dance studio and you're in the middle of the Midwest, is there more? Is there more?
Or they're like, who's Cohan? This started with this dance.
Right. Well, that's a good point too. Yeah. Who's Cohan? That's a very good point as well. He probably needs to get taught as a little as well. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of smack me across the face sometimes at the lack of knowledge.
It didn't. The forms didn't like hatch like with individuals.
Right.
So many the West African forms, their community. It's community dance. It's cipher based. It's that, like, you can pull up footage of people dancing in, Guinea right now, and it's cipher based. It's jam based. Like that's what it is today. And so you can see the origins of that in the forms here, whether it's music, every form of music that came from that tradition. And, it's kind of translated through, and turned through the realities of life in the West. And certainly in the US, in absence of the drum, more so than in the Caribbean or other places where they're still able to keep, like a few of the instruments. But in the US, there was such a concern about rebellion and all these things that it was realized very quickly that the rhythm was a language. Right. It was realized very quickly that the rhythm was a language. After what happened in Haiti, it became even more of a thing because, the Africans that were in Haiti overthrew the French government. So that became like huge alarm bells for people here. They're like, we can't let that happen. All of that. And so realizing that the drum was a tool of communication, it had to be eliminated, right? And so you still had this, like how this culture was being expressed, these different cultures of West Africa being expressed here in the US. And having individual artists become faces of that even. W.C. Handy was like early blues recording artist. I read some stuff from him where he talked about basically playing the sounds of the people. He is a musician. He studied music, so he could tell you chords, he could tell you notes, he could tell you that. But he said, like, I played the sounds of the plantations, where there were sharecroppers at that point, not, you know, slavery had ended, so it was this new form of it in the form of sharecropping. He said, I played the sounds of the levee camps. That's what I put down. That's what I recorded.
Right.
And so he was an emblematic voice of the people, of a greater experience. And that's what these music and dance forms are, with the influence of, you know, all the other people that have been around, including indigenous populations. That's one of those things that also is like very little is known about, you know, indigenous contribution to these different music forms, dance forms. But there was that, you know, interaction at different points. I mean, my bloodlines are a reflection of interaction between, you know, Black and indigenous. So the interactions happen. How do those interactions happen culturally? There's not a lot about known about it, but it didn't mean it didn't happen. So it's, you know, it's probably more than we even think. You know what I mean? There's more, you know, varied influences than we think, but being very clear about rhythmically what we have in tap dance, you know, the base of the technique being what we have in tap dance is in its essence African, West African.
It's amazing to think about, you know, just how visceral that experience must have been back then to be able to communicate, like, you know, through that. And I know that we can still do that today, but I think that, you know, dire circumstances, and then here we are last year kind of going through dire circumstances. And so just finding ways to really use our voice as tap dancers. And I think whether you're Black or white, really make sure you know what that means and what power you have in that. Because I was just thinking about, like, the difference between the entertainment form of musical theater tap dancing versus the real communicative form of improvisation. And how that allows for this different kind of human connection. Whereas maybe, you know, if I choreograph a really good kick line that builds to applause at the end, that is, yes, there is a connection there. But, you know, I was just reading an article about that Diane Walker was talking about her real moments of improvisation and really being in a true, honest moment of improvisation, and just how little they were. She was just saying there are only a few times, because it's so personal. It's such a personal experience, and once you put an audience in front of it, that puts you under a new microscope, right? And yeah. You know, this art form of tap dancing came from, I think, a different kind of observation, you know, of people around it, and it's that's what we should be teaching. You know, that's what we should be teaching.
And it, you know, as you say it, I think about, I mean, certainly what comes to mind is, you know, the reality of minstrelsy, because, you know, minstrelsy starting, you know, during slavery, it didn't start after, started during slavery. And so that, you know, people being asked to, you know, dance on the ships on the way here. Like, so the performing thing, you know, started early, right. You know, and putting these forms on stage, you know, in that sense. So it's like these blends of, you know, this evolution of American theater. So of course we have, you know, it's like, you know, the way that theater evolved in, you know, the UK and other places like that. But we also have this reality of minstrelsy when it comes to these forms. And having those things kind of all weave their way onto a Broadway stage. And it wasn't that Black people were on a Broadway stage. I'm like, I don't get that weird thing of like, there's the Broadway evolution that didn't involve Black people at all, and then there's like this other. I'm like, I don't know where that came from. I'm like, John Bubbles was on Broadway, so I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
right, exactly.
He was on
well, I
Broadway.
just think that people have a very false sense of what Broadway actually was back then. It was a very different
Yes.
beast than it is today, and certain types of shows maybe didn't fit into the American musical comedy or musical theater format, and just because of that, they assumed that it wasn't a Broadway show,
So Porgy and Bess was a
Shuffle Along was a Broadway show. Yeah. Yes.
those were,
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that that's a whole other conversation probably for another day about musical theater history and what's being taught. But it's yeah, you're hitting it right on the head. And I think it's just showing the trickle down, right? Because we can talk about dance studios and we can talk about musical theater education and we can talk about so many things. And there is this trickle down that we have to stop, I think.
and I think the part of it that's like, as far as the other aspect of, some people having such a resistance to the, credits, being given where it needs to be given. I think there's historical context for that too, in terms of like what we're used to Black people being in this society and what was meant for Black people from the jump as far as the Declaration of Independence, and it was to be in servitude or to not be citizens and And when you deal with this idea of supremacy of one group, then we have an instinct to maintain that, even if we're not wearing hoods and coats, like, and all that, but there's an instinct to somebody white must have made this up.
Yes, exactly. It was like that thing that was on Instagram that showed all of the white male vice presidents and then Kamala Harris at the end of it. I think that is pretty much a metaphor for exactly what you're talking about. That some people just, and that doesn't excuse their ignorance, but just some people just don't know anything else, So that's where
there's an instinct to resist that. And so It's like, okay, now you're going to tell us that now all these people have invented the street light. You're going to tell me that a Black person, the first person to do an open heart surgery. It's like, yes, and it was always true. His name was Daniel Hale. Yes, it was always true that a Black person invented the spotlight. Like, the stoplight, yes, it's always been true that tap dance evolved this way, but then you get people like the resistance to that, I think, has to do with some of those historic attitudes about who everybody's supposed to be in this society. Like, and we have this caste system, where these people, do the best things, and these people are a drag on society and need to be serving and to, blah, blah, blah. Then there's an instinct to maintain that thing.
Well,
and what might it mean if other people are really contributing amazing things to the culture and science and all the things that our society is? What does it mean that other people are also contributing?
Yeah.
The printer's going off. I don't know why. I'm sorry if you can hear
It's
that.
okay. Yeah. Well, there's so much more to talk about with that, but I wanna move on to an actual question that someone brought into us for this tonight. So the question really was around how do you deal with these like dream shows or dream roles that you want in your career, but you are not the right type. You're too short. You're the wrong body type. You're the wrong gender. And it brought up more of a bigger question for me of type. And I'm going to just start the conversation with, I can remember at times being in a room with a director and, the conversation going something like, well, I don't know if we could cast African-American actors in the show because it takes place in the 1930s and they would never have had, that color on the stage. And, and so I guess I asked you this question of where do we draw the line? Where does that old ideology start to dissolve and we can start thinking beyond this kind of stubborn historical or need to be historically correct to allow for diversity?
Um,
That's a big question. So
that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think it's
Save the
starting
world,
to happen.
Karida.
Like, I think people taking full on, like, you know, cat on a hot tin roof, and like everybody in the cast is black. We're gonna just like flip the whole thing, you know, something like Hamilton being told, you know what I mean, using this music, using these people, etc. I think that that's starting to happen. I think that bastion of like traditional musical theater world is where it feels real tight. Like, is where it feels like
Yes.
the most resistant. I think, you know, as more contemporary theater evolves, like that there's, you know, people are just creating that space. I think, you know, to your point about, you know, somebody's question about not being the type, I think Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know, is somebody who just started to create because there weren't any rules. It's like, what am I about to get cast in right now? Nothing.
My own show.
My own show. That's what I'm going to be cast in. I'll write something and make myself the star. That's what I'm going to do.
That's right.
You know, there's that, and you know, I think I've seen, there was a tap student I had at Broadway Dance Center. Actually, she ended up putting her own cabaret of here's me doing songs I would never be allowed to do. Like,
I love
here's me doing
those.
tunes that I would never be allowed to do. You know, and it's like, this is the only way I'm gonna get to live this out. Like, is if I create the opportunity. And you know, certainly being tap dancers, I mean, we know that it's like, it's a very DIY kind of a venture.
Yes.
Of like, what are you going to create? You know, if you're sitting around waiting on roles, you're gonna be sitting around waiting for a long time. You know, I certainly had, you know, bizarre kind of, you know, up and down experience of that, because I have the physical body type for traditional musical theater, 5'7", thin, you know, like I have that, but I have the skin thing, right? So it's like, so there's shows where I might have gotten cast had it not been for, you know, the black factor. You know, it's like, because I fit this part, but I didn't fit this part. You know, it's like
Yes.
kind of a
But you all, I
bumpy-
remember in the conversation we had months ago, you also, you know, went into detail about being sort of part of that first wave of the African-American rockette, you know, and that being, you know, that, and that changing things. So there, you know, there is change. That was some time ago, but there is change happening. I guess the question is, how much change will continue to happen, and do we see maybe this older ideology, and I think, to put it bluntly, systemic racism coming from people that are so unaware that they are even racist, and will we sort of like will we sort of end that guard and allow for a new guard of more progressive modernists, you know?
I think that question goes over to the other side of the table, like that, you know, like the producers, the donors, because so much of it goes to them, you know, whether you're looking at ballet companies that are as stuck as they've always been, as far as most of us can tell, you know, and some of the, black dancers in ballet think that it has more to do with donors. It has to do with where the dollars are coming from, and who those people want to see in, you know, traditional ballet roles, or producers, you know, behind things for traditional musical theater roles, and so I think the questions are at that level, of who's financing the productions, who's financing it, because if the people who are financing it say, I want this, then
yes, I think that probably more so than not, you have a whitewash board of directors, you know, who are putting pressure, maybe even on artistic directors who think better, you know, but
right.
are locked by the money and by the support. So that's really interesting. That's such an interesting point. Well, I think that what you said, just to reiterate it, and then I have one more question for you. But I think you know, if you're gonna keep waiting around to get cast in roles, you know, that you think you're right for, you know, you may be waiting a long time. So, you know, certainly right now we all do have time, and you know, I don't know if I'm gonna write In the Heights, you know, by the end of all of this, or another incarnation of something like that. But
Right.
but you know, I mean, I do believe that. So much of the power is in your hands, if you go maybe a road that has not been, you know, gone down before. But
Paved. And
yeah,
even in other places that I see, and I've heard more dancers that are, you know, professionals or aspiring professionals, even going into those situations where they are auditioning for somebody else and even asking themselves, do I want to audition to be a part of that? Like as far as who I see myself being as a human being, as a citizen, you know, who wants to see something else. Yes, I want to eat just like every dancer wants to eat, you know, but is that really the role I want to play? Is that really the thing I want to do? You know, or am I going to go and put myself in a position to be, you know, in a different show, in a different company, in a different, you know, and it's like put myself in front of other opportunities instead of ones that I feel like aren't in alignment, you know. And I think for all of us, dance educators, dancers, performers, etc., I think that we spend so much time on our work that I realize more and more that it's hard to do it when you don't feel aligned.
right, right.
You know, I think it makes it easier when it's like,
Sorry, Karida, you froze for a second.
I froze. Did I freeze?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay. But like who we are, do we feel, you know, we spend so many hours on our craft that want it to feel, it's such a significant percentage of our life hours, you know, it's
Yes.
like, you know, is it in alignment with who we want to be as human beings?
That's such a great
You
thing.
know?
Yeah, that's just a great point. And it also brings you all the way back to what you were saying about you are trying to teach principles. And so it does start there, you know. So I mean,
Yeah.
the young student who is getting these wholesome principles that talk about character and talk about, you know, who you are as an artist. Then here's the adult, you know, who is making the decision: do I want to be part of something that maybe goes against my own principles, and can I be okay with stepping away from that salary even though I know there may not be another one?
Yeah.
And
Or they grow up and they become donors. Like it's that, you know, you have students that don't become dancers, but they're choosing what companies they want to support, you know, what, you know, shows they want to see, and thinking about, you know, a bigger picture of what they want to be a part of as patrons even. You know, I think that that's the power of who we are as educators. And I don't think I've always done a great job of taking that mantle and, you know, for what it is. And, you know, so much of what I've been doing is a part of me trying to do better with that along with everybody else. But looking at our students and seeing they're already making choices about whose classes they want to take, what shows they want to see, and you know, and so the more that we are expansive with our education, holistic with our education, then our students can, you know, think a little differently about that. Like I have been doing some seminars about, you know, Black history lessons in dance class, and the question keeps coming up of like, you know, oh, well, I have you know, some Black and brown students that I really want them to know about these companies and da 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 da. And I'm like, why do they just need to be the ones to learn about Ballet Hispanico? Like, why are they like? Why do we need to focus it on them? But wouldn't it be amazing if all the students knew about Ballet Hispanico or knew about DTH, or, you know, so that when shows are coming to town and they see a poster for Ballet Hispanico, they go, heard about that. Like, I want to go see that.
right.
You know, that it's
inclusive.
for,
If you're gonna educate your Black and brown students, you need to educate your white students, and vice versa. But more importantly, start finding the holes and start filling them.
yeah. And it's, yeah, and so it's like they're gifts to give to all the students, you know, that they can study companies that have these different styles and different approaches and different, looks, obviously, and all of that. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think this is probably one of the hotter topics right now in dance. This last question, and I know I don't have a lot of time left with you, so I'm going to ask you to try to think about your thoughts being more condensed, but it's a big question.
Okay.
And it has to do with dance conventions and dance competitions starting again. And, we're seeing we're seeing some of our colleagues going out and teaching. I know that I have gone and taught master classes at dance studios that are adhering to the CDC guidelines. We're talking about 5 to 10 people in a dance class, 6 feet apart, masked up, all that stuff. But you're starting to see, bigger events, bigger conventions, indoors. You got it looks like 50 people in a ballroom. Where are you at with that? And what, and I just would love to hear your perspective on that.
I just think about it being responsible, just trying to find ways for it to be responsible. I'm not, I don't believe that it can't happen, or, and I see some of them being creative about block scheduling so that bubbles of people stay with these bubbles of people. And, it's great for parents. Parents are great, everything happens in these 3 hours.
Right.
So it's not the full weekend.
Yes, and I'm not renting a hotel room. And, yeah.
Right. So but at the same time, you don't get the benefit of seeing all the, the other work and all of that. So I just think about it being responsible. I understand that, people are trying to keep their livelihoods going, people who own the competitions and the conventions and all of that. And so I understand my hope is that they're trying to find ways to do it responsibly. I'm obviously not with the, who cares method and let's just all get COVID and be done with it.
Right.
I'm not personally with that method, but I think that there's some method in there in the middle, for people that are looking to do that the same way that it's been happening for people in studios to try to figure that out and let families and let everybody kind of decide where and how they want to get into it. But I just think about it being responsible.
Cool. Cool.
And what the win-win of it can be. Because I understand the students are desperate to perform.
I know, and as you said, these are small businesses that are desperate to survive. So it is a really hard, it is a tough call, and I agree that responsibility and accountability, I think, are first and foremost, and just trying to really, I guess, follow the rules. I mean, is that sort of the best way of putting it, and trying to do that to the strictest degree that you can. But it is tough. But I'm interested. I was interested to hear your thought. Well, I'm going to just quickly open it up. If there's anyone on right now who has a question for Karida, please feel free to comment in with that question. We probably have time for just one more question. But in the meantime, while people are thinking if they want to, Karida, will you just tell us where we can find out more information about your seminars, about your workshops, and about the work that you're doing?
Sure. You can. Well, what I'm doing right now, this week, I have 2 more of the seminars that I've been doing called Black History Lessons in Dance Class. I have one tomorrow, one Wednesday, and even if you can't make one of those, I can send you a limited time recording of those seminars. I've been really blown away. People are this is the best thing ever. And I'm great. Really excited at people's response to that. We're kicking off another round of the 6-week professional development program for dance educators who are looking for ways to more confidently introduce age-appropriate lessons around race and dance history in their classes. And that's not just for tap dancers, but I've got people who teach Lindy Hop, people who teach belly dance, people, Rocksharki, I learned the proper term, all the, it's from a ton of different environments that people are in the program, from all over the world. So it's a great thing. So if you click the link in my bio, that will take you to the seminars, which is the next thing coming up. Awesome.
Well, we have people just chiming in and saying hello, and what a great conversation this was. Yes. So thank you. so much, Karida, for being
Hi,
here
Reese.
and being.
I'm like, wait, I know you.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm Reese. Reese is a private student of mine. So yeah, we've been working together, and she was like, I know Karida, and then there was a moment where I was, maybe trying to come out there, at one point. When things are a little different, there will be that time. But
Open that back up.
yeah, I know how busy you are, so I appreciate you taking the time out tonight to talk to us. And there's Reese saying hi. Hello, Reese.
Hi, Reese. Is she all tall now? I haven't seen her.
Oh yeah. Well, and she's
she's gonna be tall.
Yeah, she is. We're working on some precision stuff. Definitely like just putting that in her toolbox.
Yes.
But yeah, she, Reese, she's like 35, in a 14-year-old's body.
Her hair is
so
always
mature.
Legit, proper. I know, I've done our PDX tap intensive. We'll do the full 6 hours, and her hair's still in place. And I turn around 6 hours later, and I'm like, "How is your hair still in place?" Still good. She's still good.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you. We are going to post this on IGTV, so people will be able to see it. We're also going to post it to our website. What a great conversation tonight, and I always appreciate your perspective. And thank you so much for educating us. I just want you to know that it really, you're not trying. You're doing it. I know, and I'm sure you are. Yeah, and I'm sure you are, and I'm sure, as much as we're kind of like, oh, really? Oh, that? I'm sure you have those moments too as you're doing this, but your work is so important. So just know that, and I really appreciate you. So thank you so much.
You. Yeah. Thanks for having me back.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have you back again. So.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karida. Have a great night.
All right, you too.
Thank you all for being part of our community forum tonight. And our time with Karida Griffith was always enlightening. And I hope that you all got something from it as well. So continue to follow us. We're going to be doing more of these forums as much as we can. We're offering classes. And we're just trying to keep this community together, but also educating. And I know every time I do one of these, I learn so much, and I'm trying to continue to do that at all times. So hope you will too. Thanks so much. And thanks for supporting Common Ground. Bye-bye.